middle MAGA.
They doubled down. And when I say they, I'm going to tell you why I said they, because this is, again, on the topic of the Second Amendment being suspended in the state of New Mexico. It is suspended in the whole state, in my opinion, because the edict was for the whole state. It doesn't apply to the whole state, but only because they put arbitrary public health gun statistic measures or crime statistic measures on it. So only the areas where those statistics apply is where the Second Amendment is now suspended.
So to put that in sort of a layman's terms, for 30 days in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, it's the only place that meets both those standards. Statewide order, but only one place meets both criteria, where we have far too many ER gunshot visits and we have far too many crimes involving firearms. We are suspending open and concealed carry.
Ted Lieu commented on this. And the reason why I'm going to say they when I talk about this is because what we're seeing is governors we are all in a class, for example, and governors like Whitmer, Newsom, Hochul, what they're doing is they're all fighting each other to brown nose the teacher. And the teacher, principal, the whole structure is the Democratic Party machine, the corporation of the Democratic Party. So they're all trying to stick their noses in the assholes of the Democratic Party machine. Because the more brown you get on your nose, the further your career goes. These people do not believe what they're saying. The governor of New Mexico does not believe one word that it comes out of her mouth. She's doing what she needs to do to climb the corporate ladder. That's the power of the machine controlling everything. These governors are trying to outdo each other.
In Michigan, where both the professor and I live, the state house has introduced a hate speech law that would make it a felony to say things that offend others. A felony.
We certainly have come a long way from the place where the giants on the shoulders we stand who died so that we could have free speech and have the free exercise of conscience and thought. You know, now we need to make it a felony to have ideas out there.
Let's just start here with what I have prepared. Ted Lieu talked about this yesterday. He's to the constitutional side of Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire disagrees with Ted Lieu on this statement, believe it or not. Tomorrow, I can't wait to hear how Michael Knowles is going to explain his way out of this. I can't wait to hear it. So it's good. I mean, he got ratio to I've been ratio before. I don't give a damn about a ratio. Is my take right or not? I've changed my take before. Like, yeah, that was cringe. Forced to vote. I was against forced to vote. And then I switched. I'm not going to get into why. That's so old now. And then there's other ones where I got ratioed where I didn't change my mind at all. There was that pedo account. It looked like a pedo-friendly account that said something. It did something like, we want to add this pedo label to the LGBTQ flag. And then Elon Musk banned the person. And I was like, what did they get banned for? I don't support what they're about, but did they post pictures or something? Like, what did they do? And then my take was, well, that's the problem. We need to know what happened. I got ratioed on that because people were like, oh, they called me a pedo. I was like, wow, okay, have your take. But I didn't backtrack on that. We did not see that account break any laws or even come close to it. So Ted Lieu said, I support gun safety laws. However, this order from the governor of New Mexico violates the U.S. Constitution. No state in the union can suspend the federal Constitution under any circumstance. There is no edict, there's no order, there's no possibility. I don't care if the aliens are outside the window right now and they're invading the country, the Constitution is not to be suspended. Now, they might do all these, there's a whole bunch of wartime acts and all that kind of crazy stuff. It's all unconstitutional. So it's up to us. We are the ones that are letting them get away with this nonsense. Shouldn't be happening. There is no such thing as a state public health emergency or any other exception to the U.S. Constitution. And we've talked about that. Governor Michelle Grisham comes over the top of Ted Lieu. I'm surprised by this. But when you think about it, they're trying to out brown nose each other. There can be some tension. We're like, ooh, teacher, teacher, I'm going to ban free speech. Ooh, teacher, 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 I'm going to take away kids from parents if they don't affirm their gender.
Because that is our duty as parents, to affirm our children.
And I'm a bald black woman too, so you really have to listen to what I have to say. Oh, teacher, 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 Governor Lujan Grisham, I'm going to suspend the Second Amendment. Isn't that what you all want? And so I shouldn't be surprised. Hey, Ted, conceal and open carry are state laws that I have jurisdiction over. What? If you're really interested, and we have in a way, that's the problem of not having a consistent originalist take of the Constitution. You break off of that with anything. You break off of that and let the state license and do all this other stuff. Oh, now my argument is I can do this. I can ban selling them. It says keep and bear arms. It doesn't say I can't ban selling them. You see, you get into this weird, like, oh, teacher, teacher, teacher. And somebody's trying to find a loophole within the Constitution when it shouldn't be. We don't need any scholarship. We don't need any constitutional history classes. They wrote it for you and I. They wrote it for somebody who never even finished high school to understand. And then she goes on with her lame, jab at them. If you're really interested in helping curb gun violence, I'd welcome you to join our next police academy class. I could have done without that. It wasn't funny, wasn't good, cringe. So it really came down to, Ted, conceal and open carry are state laws that I have jurisdiction over. No, you don't. So I replied to that. The feedback on it was oh man, wait till you see this post from the Libertarian Party. Man, I love their energy. They are right up on that line. That's where I want to live. And they didn't cross it, but they are right up on the line. Let me just go to that one. Man, the Libertarian Party, man, they be getting right up on the line. I love it, man. I love it. I love it. That makes you think, doesn't it? They didn't condone anything. They just, we gonna go to the gulags, aren't we? We headed to the gulags, man. We are so there. We are right there. They're getting close to it. You see, FBI, CIA, they all watching this. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And went on to say, this amendment protects the right of individuals to keep and bear arms. Any state regulations or laws they enact must not infringe upon the rights protected by the Second Amendment or any of the amendments. I'm really focused on the Bill of Rights. If state actions violate this right, they can be challenged in court and potentially, I got a proof they should be challenged in court and potentially be deemed unconstitutional. It's too soft. Should be challenged in court so they are deemed unconstitutional. This is a cut and dry case. So they can be deemed unconstitutional. Not only do we understand why it's a cut and dry case, there's no definition of what an emergency is. There's no definition of what temporary is. There's no definition of which rights the governor could take and eliminate. So the governor could say, the country's in national debt of, what is our national debt? 50 trillion? TNT said I was salty tonight. I wasn't even trying to be salty tonight, but I guess the salt must flow. What are we at? 30 trillion, whatever our debt is. They could name it over anything. I saw an ant outside. The governor of New Jersey, the governor of Michigan, Whitmer, Governor Whitmer could go outside and say, I see an ant outside. And because of that, I'm declaring a national emergency. And because of that, I'm limiting free speech. What's the difference? You might think that sounds like madness, but there's no checks and balances to this. So it could be madness. It's pretty simple. It's unconstitutional. So it shouldn't be happening. I'm going to end this story with a white pill, though, a little bit of a white pill from the people in New Mexico rising up peacefully. But that's not enough. That's not enough. This is going to be challenged in the courts. Probably tomorrow, you're going to see filings and injunction state, whatever's going to be done. That's not enough because the devil is in the process. What's happening with the Michigan 16, the alternate group of electors? What's happening with J6ers? What's happening with the indicted from Georgia? They're all using resources to defend against ridiculous claims. hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. So we are in this battle where half the battle is I banned it for a weekend. Maybe I couldn't enforce it, but I stretched the Overton window. And the courts are going to say I can't do it. She already admitted that. Nah, I'm out. I don't have to do it anymore. I'm out. Okay, I'm sorry. There's nothing to stop the next day to say, I see an ant outside. I'm suspending the First Amendment. Nothing stopping the governor from doing that. Or saying, you know what? I'm still doing the order anyway. You tell me, think this through. If they go through the court system and whichever level of court says, nah, this is madness, it's unconstitutional, the order must be relinquished or stopped. I don't even know what they would say. And then the governor, Michelle Grissom, says, nah, I don't agree with it. The order stays. Who stops it? Now, she might not be able to enforce it, but she could still have the order in place. And you know about selective prosecution going on in our country? She said it in the press conference. I can't, there's too many criminals. I can't arrest all of them. So she could still, even if it went to the Supreme Court on Monday and the Supreme Court said, you, Porky the Pig, you are way out of line. This is unconstitutional. I don't even know. What would they say? The order must be stopped. I don't know the legal term there. I have to look it up. The order must be stopped. Say the Supreme Court rules in one day. No. Unanimous. 9-0. Wrap. None. Done. Unconstitutional. Stupid. What is to stop the governor from saying, I don't care? It's still in place. There's nothing. If the sheriffs aren't going to arrest her, if the people aren't going to impeach her, if the DOJ isn't going to investigate, there is nothing that will happen. She will keep it in place, and she could fire or she could make moves in the executive branch of New Mexico to really have it in place, knowing that I can use it against my political enemies. You know those people who might rise up and say, I'm going to open carry even though you have this edict in place? Go and get them. The Supreme Court has no way of enforcing their rulings. That's why they didn't take Texas, Pennsylvania. They knew it was a trap. They were like, they knew the election, a craziness, madness. There's no way we can take this case. Look what's happening with the John Eastman stuff. I need to research on that too. I've seen a little bit on that. Crazy stuff coming out there on 2020 again. A lot of it we already knew, but to see it in the courtroom, crazy. So we can't take this case because everybody's going to see that the election's not trustworthy and we have no enforcement arm. And this is just coming off of the Summer of Love, the riots. So that's why they didn't take the case, in my opinion. So nothing's to stop her from, she could put it back in place, and there's nothing to stop her if she's in bed with Biden and the DOJ, they're not going to investigate. And if the people in the state aren't going to rise up peacefully, but somebody does need to go in, put her in handcuffs, if they're not going to do that, then what happens? Play that out. Nothing happens. Same thing could happen with Joe Biden when the Supreme Court. Joe Biden could have still went forward with the OSHA vaccine mandate. He could have still went forward with it. There's nothing that anybody could have done. You could have sued again. Maybe you would have won, but he could still keep it in place. The Supreme Court can't stop him unless you impeach him. So my point is she has to face impeachment and or criminal charges. Otherwise, there's nothing stopping her from doing it again or deterring other governors from doing the same thing. The DOJ has to investigate this. They're not going to. I understand that. But if we need to look at that and analyze, where are we then? If the DOJ is not even going to, they could investigate and say, we'll just let it go. If they won't even investigate it, that's telling. This is obviously needs to be investigated. That should be an objective opinion. Even Ted Lieu thinks it's, that's what I want. I want somebody to follow up with Ted Lieu, David Hogg. It should be investigated then, right? If it's so cut and dry, you don't even need, you just say it's cut and dry, it's stupid, it's unconstitutional. Then you agree the DOJ should investigate, right? So Joseph Bassett, and I like being tested because it forces me to flesh out my thoughts. So I made a strong statement saying that she should be arrested. Really what that means is investigated. And what's to investigate? We see what happened. There doesn't need to be much of an investigation, so I'm just jumping ahead to handcuffs. Joseph Bassett provided a critique respectfully on my comment here and said, you began well and reasonable. I'm not trying to, my goal is not to be reasonable, just to be clear. It's to be lawful. It's to be accurate. I don't know what reasonable means. You begin well and reasonable, but nosedived at the end. Oh, it took a nosedive when consequences needed to happen. Before we even go into this, obviously we need consequences. Otherwise, people will just violate your rights and say, oh, the Supreme Court will just say no. Just use your common sense. Of course there has to be a consequence. If there's no consequence, then that's what happened. That's why we're here. The pandemic happened, all of it, executive order from the federal level to the state level to the county to the mayors, zero consequence. So now, fast forward to 2023, the Second Amendment suspended in the whole state in the United States. Never been done before because there was no consequences. That's why. If the executives were, at least one of them, I think all of them, if they were put in handcuffs after the pandemic, this wouldn't be happening right now. And then Joseph goes on to say, enacting policy isn't criminal. Who said that? Okay. I didn't say enacting policy was criminal. If you go up to my statement, this must be challenged because of so if you enact policy that's unconstitutional, that's when the problems happen, not just in general. And it shouldn't be an impeachable offense. Now, that doesn't make any sense. That's up to New Mexico. But I can still say it, though. I don't have a say in that. I don't live in New Mexico. But that's up to New Mexico and their House. They're blue. They're not going to impeach. That's not the point. My point is what should be happening. And it shouldn't be an impeachable offense. Anything can be an impeachable offense. I'll have to look at New Mexico's process. But pretty much every federal, state, it's a political process. It's not a criminal process, impeachment. So you can impeach somebody because they look funny. You absolutely could, even if it's bad policy. Laws and policies are sometimes later found to be unconstitutional. Impeachment isn't appropriate here. Voting is. I would say that's appropriate too, but impeachment is more urgent. It's more immediate. So I replied, I said, if a governor's actions are deemed to infringe upon an individual's constitutional rights, they can and should face charges under federal civil rights laws. There is, when you look at Title 18, Section 242, it makes a crime, this is federal now, makes it a crime for any person acting under the color of law. See, I wish you could edit tweets because I really messed that up when I just said color of law because the executive order isn't law. I'm going to get to that in a second. To willfully deprive a person of a right protected by the Constitution. And then I said, I stand by my statement. Governor Grissom should be investigated by the DOJ and imprisoned. This is, I'm going to read this, Title 8, Section 242. Whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States, ... shall be fined. Must be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And if bodily injury results from the acts committed, then it goes on from there. So you see, that's it right there. So at the minimum, fined, and I believe it said, fined and or imprisoned not more than 1 year. Right there, cut and dry. Close the book, case closed, put Grissom in handcuffs, wrap it up, and we move on. So I got more replies from that. Said, good luck prosecuting that. I said, so you agree it's pretty cut and dry. Said it would set a new precedent. The only reason it would set a new precedent is because we've never seen a governor suspend the Second Amendment in the whole state before in the history of this country since it's been ratified. So, of course, it's setting a new precedent because we've never seen this before. That's not a take. I haven't looked. I need to look at case to see. But Joseph Bassett replies, not at all. I wouldn't say it all applies to chiefs of state and policy making. If that were the case, the law could be used for any policy or law a prosecutor thought was a violation of civil rights. Yes, that's the point. That's the whole point of it. Yeah, that's the point. Now, as we know, prosecutors don't have to prosecute every single issue. What he's trying to say is, well, every law that's deemed unconstitutional, you could prosecute and investigate. Yes, your terms are acceptable. Yes. Investigating doesn't mean you need to charge. Everyone's a little bit different. This is blatant, though. You see, you kind of straw manning it, taking it off of this case to like all cases. Nothing like this has ever happened before. So I said, of course, it can be used for any policy or law a prosecutor thought was a violation of the Constitution. That's the purpose of it. And then I'm not going to go back and forth with that too much, but this is a part that's important. Let me see if these things are so hard to find when you're in these threads. And that's why sometimes you'll see people quote tweet, because then it's also easier to find. And then notice this, I hate this about Twitter, it's in the more replies. So I don't know why they're hiding these replies that we're talking about. Like there's nothing, why are these hidden? I have to do show replies to find them. Like I can't even find some of these. Look at that, show replies on top of show replies. I'm literally digging in Twitter looking for our conversation. So I said, what you missed, here's what he said. I haven't seen where she has made an admission or stated intent to violate the Constitution. Intent, it does not matter. She didn't create law, she implemented an executive order. That doesn't matter. You see why now I'm upset I didn't write my tweet properly when I said law. It should have said, I'll show you here, and it should have said regulation. Has she committed a crime? Certainly not. Who said that? Of course she has. I just showed you the federal code. But do I think this whole thing presents a good legal question? You're in that person sounds like a book smart type person, and they're not living in reality. So I clarified in that quote I told you from the statute, it says, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom. They had to put all that in there because they knew, well, if you only put law in there, then it doesn't apply to an executive order. To hell it doesn't. A governor's executive order would fall under the category of regulation. So it does law. This is a system of rules enforced through social governance, statute, formal written enactment of legislative authority. That's not what happened. Ordinance, law passed by municipal government, like local city. Regulation. Regulations are rules or directives made and maintained by an authority. An executive order issued by a governor can be seen as a form of regulation. It is regulation by definition because it's a directive from the executive branch of a state government. It's not legislation, which would be a statute, but it has the force of law behind it. So I've made my case. She should be brought out in handcuffs and taken away. She's doubling down on it. Why is she doubling down on it? Because she knows none of that's going to happen to her. Nobody's pressing any charges. Nobody's coming for her. None of that's happening.
Middle MAGA.